So it's been great conversations. We heard about technology breakthroughs, really dynamic panel. We now heard about the immortality of blockchain. And we're now going to talk about navigating the digital revolution and sort of talk about strategies for crypto and Web3, because as we know, cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology are, of course, reshaping the very foundations of our global economy and really disrupting the financial system and establishing themselves as legitimate assets. And Web3 technologies are, of course, aiming to a decentralized, secure, and ultra-centric digital landscape. But it's also important to sort of look at strategies for users, for individuals, and for ventures. And therefore, I'm really happy to have these outstanding leaders and speakers. I mean, you were already introduced, but Utkarsh Tiwari, your Chief Strategy Officer at KoinBX, and for those of you who don't know, it's the trusted and fastest growing crypto change in the digital asset trading arena. And then we also have Ramani Ramachandran, your co-founder and CEO of Router Labs, which runs Router Protocol, a cross-chain infrastructure project and DiFin and DEX on Polygon. So warm welcome. I just thought, more as a conversation opener, do you have any anecdotes on why you sort of went into the crypto space?
So it's interesting for me that I got introduced to crypto by my wife. A friend of hers suggested that there is some coin that you guys should invest into. At the same time, my wife was also working with the crypto exchange. By 2017 or 16, we got introduced. Invested some money, lost money. It turned out to be a scam back then. But then that's the kickstart, how I got into the industry. And since then, being an IT services guy, building a lot of softwares and projects doing for startups. And then it caught my interest, the blockchain, and I got into this space and recently joined in full-time for this crypto exchange. So now that's how it started for me.
Now you're here to stay. And what about you, Ramani?
Yeah. Thank you, Sabine. I got into crypto 2015 or so, full-time. I'd been tracking it for a bit. One of my neighbors in London back in 2010 was actually mining this stuff, and one of my eternal regrets is he said, just bring your laptop, I'm going to set up a piece of software, and it's going to produce something called Bitcoins. It could be potentially useful, but I never took him up on the offer. But anyway, probably got into 2015 or so. I was in traditional finance. I was making markets for unlisted pre-IPO securities, what people call tokenization these days, and we're making markets in at the time, Uber, Alibaba, Airbnb. These are all very popular names that were unlisted, and there's a lot of demand for them, especially in Singapore and Dubai and this part of the world. And that's when there was a bee in my bonnet, because I was a banker, etc. in my previous life. So, and the previous part of my life, not previous life. But yeah, so I was to tokenize some of these and use the blockchain to bring them on-chain, if you will, and then that sort of democratizes the access and let folks buy in smaller fractional shares of some of these things. So that's how I got into crypto.
Well, great to have you in the crypto space, and you're really doing a lot to leverage that space, and also, of course, the blockchain and Web3. I wanted to start with you, Ramani, sort of looking at trends. You spoke about trends in a former panel. What do you see, emerging trends or sectors within the blockchain space that you find promising for, let's say, investments? And what criteria do you sort of consider when evaluating potential projects?
Wow. Easy question. But yeah, it's such a... I wish I knew, right? But I guess, I have what I'm sort of really excited about at some level is interoperability and account abstraction and intents and things like that, because they're all of a piece with reducing complexity, right? And this is, if you'll indulge me for a couple of minutes, I'll use this analogy with Web 2. Some of us in this room, not too many of us are familiar with the pre-Web 2 era. So when I started my career in the early 2000s, I used to work for a content management company. We used to build a content management software, and this was in Long Island, New York. And as part of the product team, the tech team, in that bucket somewhere, I had to deploy software for each stack. So there was There was a IBM WebSphere stack. There was a Sun Solaris, the whole Sun stack, and there was a Windows stack. And as a developer, there was a fragmentation of experience. And from end user, again, there was a fragmentation of experience. Somebody sent you a Word doc, and you read that on your Palm Pilot, and it came from a Microsoft machine. It would be all jumbled and mangled, right? And then what happened was, sometime in 04 or 05, the cloud came. And the moment the cloud came, it sort of unified developer and end user experiences. As a developer, you just optimize for deploying to the Amazon Docker instance. As an end user, all you need, for instance, is a Google App link or whatever app link on your iPhone. So the same way in Web3 as well, it seems to me that the challenge is to sort of push the complexity under the hood. And that's what decentralized folks like us, centralized folks like our friend Utkarsh, all of us are in the business of abstracting out complexity and giving the end user an easy solution that they can sort of bite into or get their hands into. So if you believe that that's a trend, then what could be interesting is a lot of infra has been built. I think cross-chain infra, routers, a bunch of us working on stuff. There's a lot of other account abstraction frameworks coming up. So now the next challenge, the next leap, maybe the next bull run we will see in terms of end-user applications, getting the 90% that is still not completely sold on crypto, and sort of get in Web3 integrated into the broader space. So if you look at the cloud right now, it's sort of deeply integrated across industries. The same way Web3 will also get integrated across industries, and people are not going to ask, isn't this a scam? Isn't Bitcoin going to go down? I mean, instead of having that conversation, how do you sort of have it deeply embedded into our daily lives? I think that's the next maybe direction.
And sort of looking at, because I was thinking in the prior panel where they were talking that Web3 also consists of, gaming is sort of the portal into it.
Yeah.
Just from even though you're more on the exchange side, but what's your take on that? Would you say that game, if we're talking about, adoption and particularly mass adoption?
So I think it's very interesting on that ground because the gaming community is very strong. It's growing day by day. And NFT, use case of NFTs, we have built games ourselves back in the day. And that brings in a lot of massive attraction because people like to be involved in games. They like to buy NFTs. They want NFTs to be, from one game to another, exchange their NFTs, sell their NFTs. And that brings in the kind of excitement and reward. So I think that's very interesting. That industry is going to grow regardless of how we're shaping up right now, but it's going to be massive in the coming days. So,
do you agree?
Yeah, I think there's a whole spectrum, right? You have on the one end play-to-earn games, which is like your Axie Infinity, etc., where you sort of catatonically get hooked onto something, but maybe the reward there, right? And then you have the play-to-enjoy games, which is your FIFA and Fortnite, where there's millions of folks around the world who are going to play that token or no token. So within the spectrum, I think there's ways to sort of start from one end and move it towards the other end. And then I think it's probably one of the easiest ways to sort of bootstrap chains and community.
Good point. And I was thinking sort of transitioning from gaming now and looking at sort of another aspect of Web3, which is, of course, more regulation, governance, and so forth. And it's going to be interesting because it's sort of, we get a centralized point of view and then a decentralized point of view. So, Utkarsh, if I start with you, what's your take on maybe, let's say, the significance of regulation, compliance, governance, and so forth out of KoinBX perspective?
So, being a centralized exchange, consumer interest is of paramount importance to us. We strongly root and believe that crypto regulations and legal framework should be in place because that would add a vital layer of security and sense in order to safeguard consumer interest. It will also instill confidence to institutional investors to be a participant and evolve from there. More importantly, when it comes to safeguarding customer interests, it's not just the responsibility of the governments per se. It is our duty as an exchange or the community overall, be it decentralized or centralized, that at the end of the day, it has to be something in the benefit of the consumer interest. and they are safeguarded. There should not be any fraudulent activities happening. Compliances are important. Governance has to be done on a day-to-day basis at our end. And we have to ensure that we deter bad actors into this space, and we collaborate to build the community bigger and stronger as day passes.
I want to tap into that with collaboration, but first, Ramani, I want to hear from you, sort of a decentralized perspective on compliance and regulations. And
yeah, I sort of, in a roundabout way, tend to agree with Utkarsh, right? I mean, if you look at the mid-90s, when HTTPS, the SSL, Secure Socket Layer, which is now foundational for all modern e-commerce and pretty much everything else, when that was launched, there was a big concern from the US government and a bunch of other governments around how this would be exploited by drug traffickers, money launderers, and so on, and all the cool guys around to do bad stuff, right? But then there was somehow the consensus emerged that ultimately there's going to be more good than bad, and if the large companies, the private sector, and the government work together, a lot of this can be sort of controlled. So that's why a lot of the bad stuff moved to the dark web, and there is a sort of a balance there where it's a constant fight. You can't have the yin without the yang. But I mean, it's sort of controlled. So same way, I think at some level, when I used to live in India many years ago, we used to have these discussions with the regulators there, and my point to them would be, you should not be scared of this thing, right? I mean, you should try and engage, get the smartest brains to sort of come work with you, whether you're developing a stable coin or a regulatory regime or an exchange framework or whatever. Because it's only if you work with the smartest guys that you sort of have the ability to catch the bad guys, because they're super smart too, right? So you can't just detach yourself from the problem and try and, so I think that's the way. So that's why Dubai is great, because the government, and I guess a lot of the emerging governments are sort of they get that. So they sort of get the best guys in, provide a framework extra, and sort of then try and, solve the problem in a collaborative manner, because they're looking at it as an opportunity, not as a problem. Right? Every opportunity has a set of problems. So I think, not to go off on a tangent, I think it has to be a collaborative effort between the regulators, with the regulators and the industry folks, like with any sector.
Yeah, and I also guess with regulation, I mean, technology, it's such exponential speed that the problem is usually that regulation, everything's are lagging behind, and that sort of makes it a bit of a sluggish period in that sense. But I also want to tap in before I ask if we have any question from the audience, is this notion of collaboration, because I think that goes across all industries. But when we spoke before the panel, we sort of spoke about the collaboration of stakeholders, where you have government, where you have industry, where you have businesses. But how do you see that, I mean, coming together to really do the framework, the regulatory framework? How do you see that being in the industry? Is there really an incentive for that? Or how do you incentivize that sort of collaborative stakeholder approach?
I'll take it.
Yeah, you can start.
Yes.
Okay, so the way we look at it, for us, like we are working out with agencies, we are participant to some committees. We represent the industry, not just us, but other crypto exchanges and startups in the Web3 space. We collaborate very openly with government agencies and representatives to discuss the kind of challenges they are facing. Because at the end of the day, we believe that the government has only one interest, to ensure that there is no wrongdoing happening. No one is at loss, even the businesses and the end user. So on those grounds, I believe that it has to be an open dialogue, which is collaborative, constructive, wherein we look at the benefits of the technology that it brings along. Because blockchain technology is beautiful. It brings back the human values eventually of trust, transparencies, and value. That way, I think it is very important. And the open dialogues helps us to work on the technology solutions that we can offer for the government in order to track things easily and make sure that at the end of the day, even whoever it is investing in the digital assets, they are safe. And there is nothing happening otherwise which can cause a serious damage if the anonymity continues that way. So for us, those compliances, open dialogues are very important, I think.
Well, let's hope the tech industry could be at the forefront of collaboration, looking at the world today, where collaborative communication is not really on par yet. But what about you, Ramani? Do you see that there is, I mean, coming from a decentralized point of view, is there sort of that incentive and also the significance of really having, a collaborative stakeholder approach for the regulatory frameworks?
I think so, right? And I guess it depends. As the previous question, I was, we were sort of going with the same topic. It makes sense to sort of collaborate with regulators and come up with an approach. But just the nature of these things can be corrupted. We saw in the US, right? I mean, we thought FTX and the US government were coming up with a collaborative approach, when in reality it wasn't the case. They were using that to mask their own whatever internal issues. But yeah, in the main, I think theoretically that's the approach from a regulatory perspective. The collaborative approach has to be. But I don't know how you sort of do that, right? And also, even just beyond regulation, right? People talk about decentralization, but decentralization's sake is just pure BS. I mean, there are areas where you need decentralization. Everybody needs agency. Everybody needs a voice. Like governance of a protocol, like what we're doing, for instance, is very important. But in some cases, you don't need decentralization. And folks, it's a bit like what Steve Jobs said, right, long ago, where people don't know what they want. They actually want convenience. I mean, at the end of the day, why would we be slaves to Instagram and Netflix day in, day out? I mean, we don't really have agency on what we think. I mean, there are a bunch of hormones running around in our head, and smart product designers are trying to figure out how to tap into those at the end of the day. So we need agency. That's the idea, right? And I think... And that does not, like, the defense of a nation state can that be decentralized? No. But the governance of a protocol, can it be decentralized? Yes. So, and then I guess a lot of things lie in that spectrum, and it's on a case-to-case basis, right? Yeah.
I'd like to add to what Ram said, that we do definitely need decentralization in certain aspects. Eventually, over the period of time, I believe that we'll have to strike the right balance between centralized and decentralized solutions. And that would be the best case scenario, I feel, because we cannot just leave one on the side or just hold on to one part. So I agree.
Two sides of the same coin.
Yes, we do need both.
True.
So the audience, I know you didn't ask a lot of questions and it's getting, late in the afternoon, but do seize the opportunity. Do we have anyone who has a question? No. When there's one, there's always two. But okay, so let's talk about adoption. I mean, one important aspect of adoption is, of course, education and sort of creating a narrative for, let's at least say, I mean, the users to really be able to understand and adopt I mean, Web3, crypto, whatever sort of aspect of the ecosystem. How are you working? Because I know you're very passionate about that, not least, on the educational part and creating that narrative and incentivizing users, investors, and so forth in the Web3 space and blockchain technology.
So, as I was saying earlier when we were discussing that people are skeptical about things they do not understand. We are evolving, we are learning as an industry itself. It's very new recently, so many things happening every day. So for us, when we look at from a centralized exchange viewpoint, people trust a brand and they go for the value that we suggest in. While we do not make any suggestions on investment where they should do, but for us it becomes important that whatever we do our due diligence in listing. We try to ensure that there is nothing wrong happening on our own exchange, and then we provide content to them. What are the best practices? We spoke about digital hygiene earlier, that what are the best practices to ensure that they have to do their own research, what they can follow on. We send emails, we conduct workshops. We try to also promote content in regional languages so that people understand easily. They don't have to really go through a lot of things, imagine, understand, or discuss with someone else. It's easy. That's what we focus on. We also try to understand that we run referral programs to incentivize it, or how they can, something to motivate. There has to be something. Otherwise, knowledge given for free in general does not really work out, because if it is not getting implemented in any way or form, then it doesn't bring any value. So this way, we try to, bring all the community members together. We run a lot of contests, programs, get that engagement. And at the end of the day, even if we are making a difference to one person, that's a huge difference. Slowly, we all are together in this room, so the numbers will keep increasing day by day.
And I also think in these days we've had quite a lot of, let's say scandals and crashes, I mean, from the FTX and onwards. So it's also building that trust along with education and navigating the users. Ramani, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think to add to Utkarsh's point, in the DeFi world, it calls ambassador programs, and that's super important. I mean, it's given the state of where UI, UX is, it needs folks on the ground championing this thing, uploading YouTube videos, or having these sessions in their small communities or whatever, and helping people onboard people. And I think that it's a key part across the stack. You have very young kids in colleges in India and Nigeria and all these places doing that. And on the other end, you have folks like Utkarsh and myself on a panel talking about how cool this space is, and also obviously subtly shilling our products, right? So I think that's all part of the game. I mean, you need to continuously educate across the board. Yeah.
Educating, incentivizing. We're running out of time, but I do want to just, so very brief, 2 questions, because another thing that is also sometimes a bottleneck, especially in an exponential industry like the tech industry, is, talent. Accessing talent, retaining talent, upskilling existing talent, and so forth. Just briefly, how do you find that? How do you work with that? I mean, just in case someone's actually looking to transition or is a talent, or
Okay. So we do understand the significance of having a highly skilled and motivated resource. For that matter, we go with a multifaceted approach wherein we focus on getting on board experienced and exposed resources, those who have burned their hands, because then only they'll be able to add value. We also focus on freshers who bring in the enthusiasm, the charm, the hunger that they have, because if you don't have hunger and passion, then you won't be able to deliver at the end of the day. Now, in order to onboard experience, we have webinars, master classes. We're trying to get in touch with some courses. We promote incentivize and reward basis. If they do any certifications, they do any innovation. So basically the culture of innovation, collaborative learning, that is what our focus as in culture we try to promote at our organization.
And I found that was interesting, that it's not really the CV. It's actually if you have the passion and the drive and the innovative mindset. Ramani, quickly.
Yeah, it's spot on, right? I mean, it's all of a piece with the moving away from credentialism. I mean, like just speaking to a lot of our talent, a lot of our developers are from India, and we don't go to the big IITs or the NITs, and because those are kids that are risk-averse, they want jobs in Amazon, Google. What you want is a kid from a 3rd or a 4th-tier college who's just getting his act together, right? And then he's super interested, he's got a good GitHub profile, a lot of commits, and he's contributing to projects. He's sort of done the work before he comes to you, he's proposing ideas. So that's a sort of talent. So if you're a young talent, you want to sort of come into Web3, that's what you do. And if you're a Web3 builder and you want to hire talent, that's what sort of talent you should be picking up, which is, and the smartest guys are, the smartest girls, guys, the smartest folks are typically now increasingly taking a consultative approach where they do 5 things and you're lucky to have the time. That's just the way it is.
And last but not least, and really a rapid answer, so 5 years from now, where do you see the Web3 space, and what should the people in the audience be thinking about to really keep their businesses on par for that kind of change? Just like a quick one-liner.
So I think the future is very promising. We will have to be ready, flexible, as the community has to be very flexible. There will be agile regulations. Everything will keep on evolving. What we know today will be very different tomorrow. And we have to be ready. At the end of the day, I think there will be the right balance. As I said earlier, regulations will be there. And there are ways through which mass adoption will be there through user centricity, accessibility, and that's my take. I think future looks very promising.
That's what we want to hear. Promise.
Well, can I say Bitcoin 150K and Ethereum 5K? I can't do that, obviously. But I think it's going to be a gradual embedding of Web3 into the overall economy. I mean, it's going to be a critical... one of the interesting things that I saw, long ago I worked for Moody's as a very old firm rating agency, And I was looking at the desk, and they now have a head of DeFi and Web3 assets. Right? It's amazing. So if Moody's a 100-year-old institution, if they're looking at this, I'm sure, pretty much every industry is going to eventually make Web3 an integral part of the strategy.
Yeah. Well, we're going to stay bullish, right? And then we'll see where Bitcoin is heading. But until then, remember to have a collaborative mindset, because in the end, we're all in this together. Thank you so much to Utkarsh, and thank you so much to Ramani.
Thank you.